Thank you very much for inviting me. I'm happy to be here. And yeah, I was here just a few weeks ago and we talked about some of those topics and realized that we had too little time. So I appreciate that chance to talk a little more about it. And the question for me is really, Ubicomp, are we there yet? Or what is the business in there? Is there business in there? And I have in this talk sort of first a few good news that it is around, Ubicomp is around. And then towards the end I'd like to speculate together with you where it may be going. And really, Ubicomp is all around you if you just have a look. And this weekend I went to a family event and I realized I have 3 GPS units with me. Which is not strange, because people who know me would say, yeah, you having 3 GPS units, that's not really surprising. But what was surprising, I was not the only one, and I think that was the first year. So there were a number of people carrying more than 2 GPS units with them. A phone, a GPS in the car, and perhaps sort of something on the camera or in the camera bag to make photos. And I think that's a really interesting thing. So we haven't really realized how much those technologies have gotten into our lives for many of us. And I will start sort of as everybody's sort of quite quiet with a little quiz. Now, many of you are in the technical area. What is your guess? Imagine building an OEM device that has a GPS in there, an acceleration sensor, a 3D data connectivity, and a battery. When will these be available in large quantities? We talk millions. For less than 10 euro and less than 50 grams. Who guesses next year? Who guesses in 3 years? Who guesses in 5 years? Or basically 5 years or below? Who guesses it will take longer than 7 years? Nobody. I think that's probably, it's hard to tell, but especially sort of as I didn't specify the battery well. So I think it's something all of us can imagine. We will have those OEM devices out there. And now sort of, I made an alternative. Getting this down to 3 euro and 20 grams. Probably you add a few years on top, but it's not something we can't imagine. And I think this is something which is really interesting if we think about Moore's law, looking the other way around. Basically, not just the growing computing power, it's if the computing power you need is fixed, which you need for a GPS and a data connectivity, if this is not growing anymore, eventually it will be really, really cheap. And that's what we're seeing in the market. And I have a few things about this later. And I think the last point, the power harvesting, may be one of the interesting things to look at. And another point is, which I think we all have realized, computing and infrastructure has become invisible to the user, at least as long as it's working. We don't really make a big effort in getting our mobile phone, even when we move from one country to another, set up to the network. And there is another thing that has happened. So looking around, so probably some of you have been born in the 60s and before. And you probably knew this problem of not finding your colleagues at university. I was born in 70, and I studied in Ulm, which is a really pretty city in Germany, which has some 200 pubs in a very dense area. And it was pre-mobile phone, and if you were not at the time and place where you told the others to be, you could have still a good evening, but it was unlikely to find the others. I think for somebody born after 2000, the question, where are the others, how can I find them, is completely alien. Because they will just call them or see on Google Latitude where they are. So I think here we have had a switch already in sort of understanding how we live together, how we work together. And one point, what we have realized over the last years is that mobile devices have become a gateway to Ubicomp. And that's very much in line with the original vision Mark Weiser proposed. Why do you upgrade a phone? I put 2 phones up there, one a fairly new Android one, and one phone which probably some of you have used, which was it's still, if you phone, quite an interesting device. Probably you did not upgrade from that phone to the next one because of telephony. Probably the upgrade did take because there was something else than telephony. And if you look at why people upgrade from an iPhone 3G to an iPhone 3 GS, is because of additional sensing capabilities and other additional functionality like video, basically again sensing and applications. But it's interesting, for those mobile terminals, the phone functionality is essential, and I put in essential but not central. Who of you does use an ebook reader? I used one because I thought it's a really great idea for reading theses. And what I realized, I always forgot it somewhere. I left it in the office, I left it at home, and when I took it with me, even so it needed only charging every few weeks, it was empty. And that's an interesting thing, and we have an iPad in the lab, and it feels similar. I'm not sure yet if I get to that point. I think, who of you is turning around? We get this gymnastics, we heard we have to live healthier. Who of you is turning around if they realize in the morning that they left their phone at home? And I think that's something I travel a lot on the train, even if I have to take the next train, if I leave my phone at home. It will sort of create troubles the whole day, so I'd rather take the next train and get my phone. And I think that's something really, really interesting. And if you look at sort of the take-up of the iPhone, of other phones, this phone functionality is really essential to make people carry that device, because it's sort of that point. And then you pack all the other functionality on top. And I think that's, also looking back at Weiss's vision, that was not much in there. But I think what we see, this convergence of PDA and mobile phones, what people talked about in the late 1990s, has happened in an interesting way. And to me, mobile phones have become PDAs. It's not the other way around. There was not much of a convergence. It's basically mobile phones have moved into PDAs, which have phone functionality. And if you look back at things like the Palm Pilot, the iPad from Compaq, it really is interesting that what we see, what are the game changers at the moment on the mobile devices, is not the telephone, it's basically the applications. And when you look at what happens at the moment to the Android market, it really, the way of creating applications for those devices, that is changing very much the game. It's not that functionality which is pre-programmed into the device, it's the way of creating applications for these devices. And now we had this discussion, sort of, Ubicomp. Is it sort of just phones? What is it? And I picked now a few old papers, some from our group, some from other groups, and look back sort of 10, 15 years if Ubicomp research has really made an impact. And let's see. I'm not sure who of you has done Ubicomp research in 1999. Probably some of you was somebody at that first Ubicomp conference. Perhaps, yeah, there are people. And there was a paper which was at a conference very highly discussed. It was called Pocket Bargain Finder. It was at that time from Accenture Research. And basically it looks pretty trivial by now. It's a PDA barcode scanner, and you can go into a shop and scan books. And then you get sort of the online prices.